Unaware that his ex-wife was the true owner of the company, Mark Langston stood beneath the chandeliers of Manhattan's Grand Gala, smiling like a king ready to crush a ghost from his past. He had personally invited Emma, not out of nostalgia, but to humiliate her before the same board members who once whispered she was his biggest mistake. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and the crowd waited for the spectacle. She arrived in silence, every step elegant, every gaze fixed on her, the forgotten woman walking back into the empire she secretly ruled. To the world, she was the failed designer he divorced. To him, she was nothing but a shadow from another life. But when her name appeared on the company's ownership display, the laughter around him froze and his smile faltered for the first time. Who was the woman he mocked as powerless? How long had she been standing quietly above him, holding the very empire he believed was his? And when truth replaced his arrogance under those golden lights, what would he do when the crowd realized? The ex-wife he came to humiliate was his boss. The evening sun poured through the penthouse windows, gilding the marble floors in warm amber light. Emma Langston stood near the window, folding her husband's tailored blazers into a suitcase. The city shimmered below, Manhattan glowing like gold. And for a moment, it looked like their marriage was as flawless as the skyline itself. "Don't forget the Navy one," Mark's voice came from behind her, calm and authoritative, the way executives sound before a major deal. He leaned on the doorframe, scrolling through his phone. "The board dinner's tomorrow. I want to look sharp." Emma smiled faintly, smoothing the fabric before closing the zipper. "You always do," she said. Her voice carried affection, but also exhaustion, the kind built from quiet sacrifices no one applauds. She glanced around the apartment, the crystal decanters, framed photos from charity galas, magazine covers featuring Mark's confident smile. They looked like the perfect couple, Manhattan's golden pair. But lately the shine had dimmed. Conversations felt rehearsed. Dinners ended with silence. Love had become routine. Mark walked over, adjusting his cufflinks in the mirror. "Did you get the fabric order confirmed?" he asked without looking at her. "We can't have delays with your boutique again. Investors are starting to talk." Emma hesitated. "I'm working on it. I just need another week." He sighed, sharp, dismissive. "Emma, you're not running a garage shop in Brooklyn anymore. Either you deliver or step aside. Failure isn't a good look for a Langston." His words stung, but she kept her face soft. "It's not failure, Mark. It's growth. It just takes time." "Time?" He turned, smirking. "That's what people say when they're losing." Emma looked at him, the man she once fell for when he had nothing but ambition and a dream. Now success had replaced his humility with something colder. She wanted to remind him of the nights they planned their future over cheap takeout and shared hope. But those memories felt like they belonged to strangers. "I'll fix it," she said quietly. "I promise." Mark didn't reply. He picked up his suit jacket, sprayed his cologne, and checked his reflection again. "You'd better," he murmured. "Because I can't keep carrying dead weight." She froze. Dead weight? He met her eyes for the first time that evening. "Emma, this marriage used to be partnership. Now it's charity. I'm building a brand that represents success. You running a struggling boutique doesn't exactly fit the image." The air between them turned sharp. The skyline behind her blurred as tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "I thought love wasn't about image," she whispered. Mark laughed softly. "That's what poor people say." He grabbed his car keys, adjusted his tie, and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Dinner with investors," he replied, but his tone told her it wasn't business. It was Anna. When the elevator doors closed behind him, Emma stood alone, clutching the sleeve of his jacket that she'd forgotten to pack. The scent of his cologne lingered like a ghost, sharp, polished, expensive. Her boutique had been her dream, the one thing she built with her hands, her vision, her heart. But now even that dream trembled under the weight of his scorn. As she gazed out at the city, its lights blinking like 1,000 watching eyes, Emma whispered to herself, "I'll prove you wrong, Mark. You'll see who really carries who." She didn't know yet that the proof would come, not from survival, but from destiny. and that one day the same man who mocked her as dead weight would kneel before her, begging for forgiveness beneath the glittering lights of a gala he thought would destroy her. The boutique smelled faintly of jasmine and fabric dye when Emma unlocked the door that morning. The soft hum of the city outside had barely begun, but she was already there before sunrise, sleeves rolled, hair tied, determination fighting exhaustion. Bolts of silk lined the walls like soldiers awaiting orders, but beneath their beauty lay debts, late payments, and fading hope. She ran her hand along a finished gown hanging near the window. Ivory satin, hand-stitched with care. "This one will change everything," she whispered as if speaking faith into fabric. But when the doorbell chimed, reality entered wearing heels. Anna Pierce, her young assistant, breezed in with perfect lipstick and a phone glued to her hand. "Morning, ma'am," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I confirmed the delivery with the client in Beverly Hills, but they said payment will be delayed again." Emma's shoulders tensed. "That's the third delay this month. Did you explain the urgency?" "I did," Anna said lightly, setting her phone down. "They said the last shipment wasn't packaged to standard. Maybe we need to upgrade materials." Emma frowned. "We can't upgrade without clearing the current invoices. You know how tight things are." Anna tilted her head, pretending sympathy. "I understand, but if Mr. Langston helped, even just a little, things could move faster." Emma's throat tightened. "Mark has his own company obligations. I can't rely on him for everything." Anna gave a small shrug and returned to rearranging dresses. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy, like something unspoken lingered just beneath the air. At noon, Emma stepped outside to make a supplier call, her voice steady though her hands shook. She didn't see Anna glance at her phone, smile faintly, and step toward the back door, where a familiar black sedan waited. Mark sat inside, sunglasses on, his jaw sharp with impatience. "She suspects nothing," Anna said as she slid in beside him. "She doesn't need to," Mark replied coldly. "All I need is the legal paperwork finalized. Once she signs over her boutique as collateral, she'll be finished." Anna smiled, tracing a finger along his sleeve. "And what about us?" Mark smirked. "You've already proven more useful than she ever was." They laughed, quietly, carelessly, as the city hummed around them, unaware of the betrayal brewing inside that parked car. By evening, the boutique lights flickered. Emma stood by the counter, surrounded by receipts and unanswered emails. She pressed her temples, whispering, "Please, just one good order." But instead, her phone buzzed with a message from the bank. "Final notice. Account overdue." When she got home, Mark was waiting, not with comfort, but with whine and criticism. "You're still chasing the same fantasy," he scoffed as she set down her bag. "I told you to close that place months ago. You should have listened." "I just need more time, Mark," she said softly, lowering herself onto the couch. "The designs are gaining traction. I'm so close to turning things around." "Close," he laughed, tossing his glass onto the table. "Emma, you've been close for 3 years. You're embarrassing me in front of the board. Do you know what it's like having people whisper that my wife's business is failing?" Emma's eyes glistened. "Failing doesn't make me worthless. I've worked every day." He cut her off. "Working doesn't mean winning. Some people are just not built for success." Her breath hitched. "And what am I built for then?" He turned away, shrugging. "I don't know. Pity, maybe." The words hit harder than any slap. She rose slowly, clutching the edge of the sofa for balance. "I believed in you when you had nothing, Mark." He smirked without turning around. "Maybe that was your first mistake." The sound of the city outside felt distant, muted by the ache in her chest. She looked at the man she once prayed for, now a stranger drowning in his own ego. For the first time, she realized love alone could not fix a heart that worshipped power. That night, when Mark fell asleep beside an empty wine glass, Emma lay awake staring at the ceiling. The city's lights blinked like silent witnesses, and the reflection of her boutique's framed photo glimmered on the nightstand. Her hands trembled as she touched it. "I won't let you die," she whispered to the dream she built, unaware that the people she trusted most were already setting fire to everything she loved. Outside, the rain began to fall, quiet at first, then heavier, as if the heavens themselves wept for what was about to come. The storm came without warning. The first call reached her at 2:13 a.m. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, pulling her from a restless sleep. "Ms. Langston, your shop. There's smoke everywhere. You need to come now." The voice on the other end trembled, swallowed by chaos. Emma sat upright, confusion cutting through the fog of exhaustion. "Smoke? What do you mean smoke?" "The boutique, ma'am. It's on fire." She was on her feet before the words finished echoing. The rain outside was relentless, slamming against the windows like a warning she hadn't heard soon enough. She didn't grab a coat or shoes, only her keys. Her heart pounded as she raced through the Manhattan streets, headlights slicing through the rain. When she turned the corner, her world was burning. Flames rose through shattered windows, devouring fabric, mannequins, and dreams she had built with her bare hands. Fire trucks surrounded the block, sirens screaming against the night. Neighbors stood under umbrellas, whispering her name in pity. Emma ran forward, but a firefighter caught her by the arm. "Ma'am, stay back. It's not safe." "That's my life in there," she cried, her voice breaking. "My entire life." The roof cracked with a groan, and a wall of heat forced her backward. Sparks danced through the air like cruel confetti. For a moment she saw her logo, EL Atelier, collapsing into ash. Her knees buckled. Mark's black car pulled up moments later, headlights washing over her as she knelt on the sidewalk. He stepped out slowly, umbrella in hand, his robe still tied loosely as if he'd been dragged from sleep. But there was no panic on his face, only annoyance. "Unbelievable," he muttered, shaking his head. "All that money down the drain." Emma turned to him, her voice shaking. "Mark, everything's gone. All of it." He sighed. "Yes, Emma, I can see that. Maybe if you'd listened to me and shut it down, we wouldn't be standing in the rain watching your hobby burn." Her lips parted, disbelief freezing her tears. "My hobby?" Mark's gaze was sharp, condescending. "You turned a partnership into a liability. I warned you that emotions don't run companies. You never learn." The fire reflected in his eyes, making him look almost sinister. Behind him, a familiar figure appeared. Anna, clutching a trench coat around her shoulders. Her eyes darted nervously, but her presence said everything Emma needed to know. "You brought her?" Emma whispered. Anna's lips parted, searching for words, but Mark spoke first. "She's been helping with the accounts. You should be thanking her, not questioning me." Emma's breath caught. "Helping with my accounts?" He ignored her, waving to the firefighter. "Make sure the insurance claim goes directly to my assistant. We'll handle it from there." Something inside Emma snapped. "Your assistant?" she repeated softly, her voice trembling. "That's what she is now?" Mark exhaled through his nose, the way people do when they're bored with compassion. "Let's not make a scene, Emma. You're already enough of a spectacle." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emma looked around. Their neighbors, customers, employees, all watching, whispering. "Mark, please," she said, her voice breaking. "Don't do this here." "Do what?" he said with a cold smile. "Tell the truth?" He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. Crisp, white, cruel. "I was going to wait until morning, but since fate clearly chose tonight," he threw it at her feet. "Sign it. Let's make this official." Rain splashed over the envelope, spreading the ink slightly. Divorce petition. Emma stared at it, her reflection shimmering in the puddle beside it. "You're divorcing me? Tonight?" Mark's eyes were merciless. Tonight, tomorrow, it was coming either way. "Failure isn't contagious, Emma, but I won't risk catching it." Anna's hand found his arm, and for a second, she looked guilty. But Mark didn't even notice. He turned away, umbrella angled, walking toward the car that waited to take him far from the ashes of the woman who once believed in him. The fire behind them hissed louder, devouring the last of her dreams as if mocking her for still standing. Emma dropped to her knees, the rain soaking through her clothes, her fingers clutching the wet envelope like a lifeline she didn't want to hold. A voice from the crowd whispered, "Poor woman, she built all this, and he leaves her in the fire." Another added, "Guess success was never meant for her." She couldn't hear them anymore. The city blurred, her pulse roaring in her ears. All she could feel was the weight of betrayal pressing down until she could barely breathe. When the last ember died, only smoke remained, thick, bitter, and endless. Emma rose slowly, her eyes burning not from fire, but from resolve. Somewhere deep inside the ruin, a small spark still lived. It whispered that this wasn't the end. Not yet. And someday soon, the man who threw her away would burn, not by flames, but by truth. The morning after the fire, the city seemed colder, the sky washed in gray. Emma stood before the blackened remains of her boutique, her reflection trembling in the puddles scattered across the street. The ashes still smoked faintly, curling into the pale dawn like memories refusing to die. People passed without stopping. Some slowed down, whispering her name. Others simply looked away. She wasn't Emma Langston, the designer, anymore. She was the woman whose dream had burned to the ground. She wrapped her coat tighter, trying to block the autumn chill that sliced through her. Her hands still smelled faintly of smoke, no matter how hard she'd scrubbed them. Every detail felt surreal. The warped signboard, the melted mannequins, the smell of scorched fabric. From behind, a voice broke the silence. "Mrs. Langston." She turned to see Mr. Carter, the senior bank manager who had once shaken her hand proudly when her business loan was approved. Now his tone carried no warmth. "I came as soon as I heard. I'm truly sorry for your loss. But we must discuss your financial situation." Emma's heart sank. "Mr. Carter, please, I just need time." "I understand," he interrupted softly, "but the loan is unsecured, and the insurance company has yet to confirm liability. Without collateral, we'll be forced to take legal action in 7 days." She blinked in disbelief. "Legal action? You mean you'll take my apartment? Unless you can provide immediate repayment or assets, I'm afraid that's the procedure." His eyes shifted uncomfortably. "You might speak to your husband. Mr. Langston has the connections to handle matters like this." Emma felt her stomach twist. "He's not my husband anymore." Mr. Carter hesitated. "I'm sorry," he said quietly before walking away. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the smoke curling from her ruins, feeling the city's noise fade into a dull hum. Then slowly she turned and walked home through the drizzle, her heels splashing through puddles, her face numb. When she reached her building, a crowd had gathered in front of the lobby. Some were neighbors. Others were reporters, their microphones gleaming under umbrellas. Questions flew like arrows. "Mrs. Langston, is it true your boutique was uninsured? Did your husband leave you? How do you plan to recover?" She froze, unable to speak. Someone snapped a photo. The flash hit her eyes like lightning. She pushed through the crowd, trembling, ignoring their questions. The elevator ride up felt endless, every second echoing the rhythm of her heartbreak. Inside her apartment, silence hit her like a wave. The once pristine living room now felt like a museum of deceit. His watch on the counter, his jacket still on the couch, his scent haunting every corner. The divorce papers lay on the coffee table, stained from the night before. She sank onto the floor beside them, pulling her knees to her chest. Her sobs came quietly at first, then uncontrollably, each one heavier than the last. Hours passed before she finally rose. Her eyes were swollen, her voice hoarse. She opened the window, letting the cold air hit her face. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "This can't be the end." The knock on the door startled her. For a second, she thought it was Mark, maybe returning in guilt. But when she opened it, a woman in a tailored gray suit stood there, holding an envelope. Her presence was calm, composed, professional. "Mrs. Langston?" "Yes?" "My name is Miss Adams," the woman said, her tone gentle but firm. "I represent the estate of the late Mr. Richard Langston." Emma blinked. "My husband's father?" "No," Miss Adams said softly. "Your uncle." Emma froze. "Uncle Richard?" Miss Adams nodded, handing her the envelope. "He left instructions that this be delivered only when you were at your lowest point. His words, not mine." Emma's trembling hands tore it open. Inside was a handwritten letter, the ink slightly faded, but the message clear. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, life has already tested you beyond what I wished. But I have seen your spirit from afar. your perseverance, your grace. I built an empire in silence so that one day someone worthy could inherit it. That someone is you. Enclosed is the deed to everything I owned. Stocks, properties, trust funds, valued at $100 million. Use it not for vengeance, but to rebuild and bless. Rise with dignity, and the world will see what strength truly means. Emma's breath caught. The room swayed around her. She read the words again, slower this time, as if afraid they might vanish. $100 million. Ms. Adams smiled faintly. Your uncle saw something in you that the world overlooked. The paperwork is ready, but discretion is essential. Not a word until you're ready. Emma's hands trembled as she folded the letter, pressing it to her chest. Tears streamed silently down her face. Not from grief this time, but from something new. Hope. Miss Adams, she whispered, her voice breaking. Why me? Because, Miss Adams said gently, you never stopped trying, even when the world turned its back. When she left, Emma stood alone, the letter still in her hand. For the first time in months, she smiled. Small, fragile, but real. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky had cleared into the soft light of evening. She walked to the window, watching the city she once thought had abandoned her. Not for revenge, she whispered to herself, for rebirth. And somewhere in the distance, among the towers Mark once called his kingdom, a storm far greater than fire began to gather. One that would make him kneel before the very woman he tried to destroy. The elevator doors opened to a gleaming marble lobby 30 floors above Manhattan. The golden plaque on the wall read, Vanguard Lux Corporation. Emma stepped inside with quiet confidence, her heels echoing softly against the floor. Gone was the fragile woman who once cried in the ashes of her dream. In her place stood a woman who had learned that silence can be sharper than any weapon. It had been 3 months since Miss Adams handed her the letter that changed her life. The inheritance was real, $100 million locked behind trust accounts, properties, and silent shares. But Emma had chosen patience. She hadn't stormed back into the world screaming victory. She studied. She listened. She learned the game before re-entering the board. Ms. Adams had revealed the most ironic twist of all. Her uncle's empire was deeply invested in Vanguard Lux, the same company Mark had spent years clawing to control. Without realizing it, Mark worked for her. The man who divorced her for being dead weight now served under her signature. When she first saw the corporate documents confirming her majority stake, she didn't cry. She only whispered, fate has a sense of humor. Now she stood in the lobby of the company her ex-husband thought he ruled, disguised not as a queen, but as an observer. Under Ms. Adams' guidance, she took the role of strategic investor liaison, her ownership hidden behind legal confidentiality clauses. Her new name in the office was Emma Reynolds. No one recognized her beyond a polite glance, not even the receptionist who once attended her wedding. Good morning, Miss Reynolds, the secretary greeted as she stepped into the elevator. The board meeting starts in 15 minutes. Thank you, Emma replied, her tone calm but commanding. When the doors opened again, she stepped into a glass-walled conference room overlooking the skyline. The hum of conversation quieted as Mark Langston entered, surrounded by board members and flattery. He looked immaculate, perfect suit, confident smile, the aura of a man convinced he controlled the room. Emma's heart skipped once, not from love, but from disbelief at how small he seemed now. All arrogance, no depth. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark began, spreading his hands. As you know, Vanguard Lux has faced recent investor uncertainty, but under my leadership, we're back on track. Our next gala will prove that the Langston name still stands for prestige. Emma leaned back, her eyes steady. The Langston name? He said it like a brand, not a marriage. Mr. Langston, said Mr. Drake, one of the senior shareholders. Before we proceed, our legal department has confirmed an additional silent shareholder has joined the board. Ms. Reynolds represents her interests. Mark turned toward her, the confident smile flickering briefly. Ms. Reynolds? Emma rose slowly, meeting his gaze. Mr. Langston. For a second their eyes locked, and though he didn't recognize her under her new name, something in her composure unsettled him. "Welcome aboard," he said with a practiced grin. "We always appreciate new investors who believe in my vision." "Your vision," she said softly, "has potential, but I prefer results." A few executives chuckled nervously. Mark forced a smirk, dismissing the edge in her tone. "Don't worry, Ms. Reynolds. I deliver both." "Let's hope so," she said, sitting back down. "The future depends on it." When the meeting ended, he approached her privately, charm dripping from every word. "I must say, you remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who underestimated business, then learned too late how the world works." Emma smiled faintly. "And did you ever learn, Mr. Langston?" He laughed, misreading her. "I'm still teaching." She watched him walk away, the faintest curve of irony touching her lips. "You're about to be the student," she thought. Over the following weeks, Emma moved silently through the company's halls. She met department heads, evaluated projects, and restructured financial chains through Ms. Adams' legal channels. Every major decision Mark made now passed under her quiet approval without him ever realizing it. But power wasn't what she sought. She wanted something greater. Grace. Her office overlooked the same skyline that once witnessed her tears. At night, she stood there alone, remembering the boutique, the flames, and the man who walked away. Now the same city bowed beneath her signature. Still, she never let pride replace purpose. Instead of revenge, she began funding scholarships under the company's foundation, rebuilding women-led businesses, and supporting designers who'd once faced the same rejection she had. Slowly, her influence began to ripple through the board. And then, one crisp winter morning, Mark's secretary delivered a gilded envelope to her desk. "You are cordially invited to the Vanguard Lux Annual Gala, celebrating new beginnings and future triumphs." Emma ran her fingers over the embossed logo, her expression unreadable. New beginnings. Future triumphs. He thought he was celebrating himself. She smiled, whispering, "No, Mark. You're about to celebrate the woman you left behind." And when that night came under the glittering chandeliers and camera flashes, he would finally learn what fate does to men who mock the women who built them. The ballroom shimmered like a dream money could buy. Golden chandeliers dripped light across crystal tables. Violins hummed softly in the background. And the city's most powerful faces moved through the crowd in glittering evening gowns and tuxedos. Cameras flashed from every angle. The air was thick with pride, champagne, and pretense. Mark Langston stood at the center of it all, the man of the hour, wearing a black tuxedo that gleamed beneath the lights. His laughter carried easily, practiced and perfect, the kind of sound that belonged to men who believed the world revolved around them. "Tonight," he declared to a small circle of investors, "we celebrate the resurrection of Vanguard Lux. We've weathered storms, rebuilt trust, and proved that leadership and loyalty still means something in this industry." "Leadership," murmured one investor approvingly, "and vision. You've done wonders for this company, Mark." He smiled, soaking in the praise. "And tonight," he added, lowering his voice just enough to sound mysterious, "we'll even have a special guest. Someone from my past who could use a reminder of what true success looks like." The men around him chuckled, raising their glasses. "Old rival?" one asked. Mark's lips curved. "Old mistake." Across the ballroom entrance, a hush spread as the double doors opened. Heads turned, cameras clicked, and there she was, Emma. She stepped in with quiet grace, her black satin gown flowing like liquid shadow, her hair swept elegantly behind her shoulders. There was no jewelry except a single diamond pendant. Subtle, perfect. Her calm presence drew eyes not because of extravagance, but because of power. Even before anyone knew who she was, she owned the room by simply existing in it. Mark's confident grin froze for just a second. He hadn't expected her to come. "Well," he murmured, swirling his wine, "she actually showed up." Anna, draped in a glittering gold dress, slid up beside him, her arm snaking around his. "Then let's make sure she regrets it." The crowd parted as Emma crossed the marble floor, her heels tapping softly, rhythmically. A few guests whispered in recognition, some recalling her as the ex-wife of Mark Langston, others struggling to place the face that carried both pain and dignity. She stopped near the bar, accepting a glass of water instead of champagne. Her reflection shimmered in the mirror behind the counter, framed by the opulence she once couldn't afford. Mark approached with a confident swagger, his smile all performance. "Emma," he greeted smoothly, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "What an unexpected surprise. I didn't think you'd still accept my invitations." She turned to him, her voice steady. "You sent it personally. It would have been rude to decline." The air between them thickened with years of unspoken words. Mark glanced at Anna, who smirked, then back at Emma. "You look better than I remember. I almost didn't recognize you without the ashes and debt." A ripple of laughter spread from the nearby guests. Emma didn't flinch. Her eyes met his, calm and sharp. "And you," she said softly, "look exactly as I remember. Someone mistaking arrogance for confidence." For the first time that evening, Mark's grin wavered. "Still dramatic," he said under his breath. "Always needed the last word." "Not anymore," she replied, her tone almost kind. "Some words aren't worth speaking." Anna leaned in with false sweetness. "You're welcome to stay. Of course. Tonight's a celebration of Mark's leadership. The board will be announcing the final ownership structure of Vanguard Licks. It should be enlightening." Emma smiled faintly. "I'm counting on it." The orchestra swelled, and the host's voice echoed through the ballroom microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats for the keynote presentation." Mark straightened his jacket, offering Emma a mock bow. "Watch closely," he said, his voice full of pride. "This is the part where history remembers me." Emma's lips curved slightly. "Oh, I will." As everyone settled, the lights dimmed and a massive screen lit up behind the stage, displaying the company's emblem. The host continued, "Tonight we honor the visionary leadership that has guided Vanguard Lux to unprecedented heights. But before we proceed, it's my privilege to reveal the corporation's updated shareholder registry, as transparency and integrity remain our pillars of trust." Mark sat upright at his table, ready for applause. He winked at Anna, whispering, "Watch this." Then the screen flickered. Names appeared, legal, digital, binding. At the very top, highlighted in gold, primary shareholder, Emma Langston, Reynolds Trust Holdings. The room went dead silent. Mark blinked, his smile frozen, confusion clouding his eyes. What is this?" Murmurs spread like wildfire. Cameras swung toward Emma, whose calm gaze remained fixed on him. The host, oblivious to the storm, continued. "Vanguard Lux extends its gratitude to our majority stakeholder, Ms. Emma Langston, for her continued trust and strategic leadership through Reynolds Trust." Anna's face drained of color. "Mark," she whispered, panic flooding her voice. "What does that mean?" Mark's hand tightened around his glass until it cracked. He turned toward Emma slowly, his voice breaking the heavy silence. "You?" She rose from her seat, her gown catching the light like liquid power. "Yes, Mark. Me." Her voice carried through the hall, calm, strong, devastatingly composed. "The woman you called dead weight, the one you tried to humiliate, the owner of the empire you thought was yours." Every camera flash caught his expression, disbelief melting into humiliation. Guests whispered, journalists scribbled. The empire he built on pride was collapsing in front of his peers, and all he could do was stare. Emma looked down at him, her eyes soft but firm. "I didn't come to destroy you, Mark. I came to remind you that cruelty is a poor investment." Then she turned and walked toward the exit, leaving him frozen amid the noise of his own undoing. The gala erupted, not with applause, but with the sound of truth finally spoken aloud. And under the glittering chandeliers that once symbolized his victory, Mark Langston finally realized the cost of underestimating the woman who had built him. The morning after the gala, the city felt different. The headlines had already flooded the newsstands and digital feeds. Vanguard Luke's CEO humiliated after ex-wife revealed as company owner. The woman he mocked now signs his paycheck. The story spread faster than truth usually does, because it had everything Manhattan loved. Betrayal, irony, and poetic justice wrapped in designer gowns and corporate intrigue. Mark sat in his office, blinds drawn, phone silent. The air smelled of spilled whiskey and panic. His reflection in the window didn't look like the man who had walked into the gala the night before. Confident, admired, untouchable. This man looked hollow. His assistant entered quietly, her voice trembling. "Sir, the board has requested your resignation, effective immediately." Mark didn't look at her. He just stared at the skyline, the same skyline that once mirrored his ambition. "Tell them I'll respond when I'm ready." "Sir," she hesitated. "They've already locked your access." That broke him. He turned sharply, eyes bloodshot. "What?" "Security was instructed to escort you out within the hour." He laughed bitterly, running a hand through his hair. "Out of my own company." But it wasn't his anymore. It never really was. It belonged to the woman he threw away, the one whose name now carried more power than his entire career. Outside, flashes from paparazzi cameras already filled the street below. His humiliation had become public property. Every step he took now would echo with what the world already decided he was, a fool blinded by pride. The office door opened again. This time Anna stood there. Her designer heels clicked softly against the floor as she entered, face pale but expression sharp. "I saw the headlines," she said quietly. Mark looked at her, the fury in his eyes barely restrained. "So did the whole world." She folded her arms. "You told me she was finished. You told me she had nothing." "How was I supposed to know?" he snapped. "She hid it. She planned this." Anna smirked faintly. "Planned it or earned it?" Mark's voice cracked. "Don't you start." "I'm just being realistic," she said coolly. "You've lost everything, Mark. The investors pulled their funding this morning. The penthouse lease? It's under the company's name. You'll be out by next week." He slammed his hand on the desk, rattling the glass. "I can fix this. I built this company." "No," Anna said softly. "She built it now." He froze, the weight of those words settling into the silence. Anna walked closer, her tone shifting to something colder. "You know there's a saying, never burn the bridge you might need to cross again." He glared. "Don't you dare lecture me." "I'm not," she replied, shrugging. "I'm just saying I don't plan to sink with you. The investor from last night, the one from London? He called me this morning, offered me a role in his firm, a better salary, a cleaner reputation." Mark's eyes widened. "You're leaving me?" Anna smiled, but there was no joy in it. "You left her first. Seems like karma finally learned your schedule." She turned and walked toward the door. "Good luck, Mark," she said without looking back. "You'll need it." The door closed behind her with a click that sounded final. Mark sat there, gripping the edge of his desk until his knuckles went white. His empire, his mistress, his pride, all gone within 24 hours. He pressed his palms against his eyes and whispered to the empty room, "What have I done?" Meanwhile, across the city, Emma stood in a sunlit conference room, overlooking the skyline that once mocked her. The board had insisted on reinstating her as executive chair, but she declined the title. "Leadership isn't about revenge," she told them. "It's about rebuilding the right way." Miss Adams stood beside her, smiling proudly. "You handled last night with grace. That's what separates the powerful from the petty." Emma nodded quietly. "He humiliated himself. I didn't need to lift a finger." "Still," Miss Adams said, "the entire city knows the truth now. You could do anything with this moment. Rebrand the company, change the name, make it yours." Emma turned to the window, watching the reflection of the city in the glass. "It already is mine, but not for vengeance, for value." Her cousin James entered, carrying a folder of charity proposals. "The foundation's ready," he said softly. "We can start helping the women entrepreneurs you wanted to support." Emma took the folder, flipping through the plans. Her eyes softened as she read the names of applicants, small business owners, designers, mothers rebuilding from nothing. "Let's begin with them," she said, smiling faintly. "They deserve the break I never had." Down below, Mark stood outside Vanguard Lux for the last time, surrounded by reporters, microphones pushed toward his face, voices shouting questions. "Mr. Langston, any comment on your ex-wife's takeover? Do you regret your treatment of her? Is it true she now controls all your former assets? He said nothing. He just stared at the building's tall glass doors, where security guards now blocked his entry. Inside those walls, she was rebuilding everything he had destroyed. Emma watched from her office window as the crowd swallowed him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then softly she whispered, "Some lessons can't be taught in love. They have to be learned in loss." And as he disappeared into the blur of flashing cameras, Emma turned back to her desk, signing the first document of her new era. Not as revenge, but as renewal. The morning sun spilled through the glass walls of the newly refurbished Vanguard Lux headquarters. Though now, the name on the building had changed. The letters gleamed in brushed gold. The Langston Grace Foundation. Below, hundreds gathered for the inauguration ceremony. Cameramen, philanthropists, business leaders, and ordinary citizens filled the plaza. Reporters whispered about the woman who turned humiliation into hope. Emma stood on the balcony overlooking them, dressed in a simple white suit. No diamonds, no theatrics, only elegance and calm authority. James stood beside her, holding a folder of pledges. Miss Roitran, nothing. Adams waited behind them, smiling with pride. "Are you ready?" James asked quietly. Emma nodded. "For the first time in my life," she said softly. "Yes." As the microphone clicked on, the murmuring crowd fell silent. Cameras aimed upward, their flashes reflecting in the morning light. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear, warm, and steady. "Many of you know me as the woman who was humiliated, forgotten, and left behind. But today I stand before you not as a victim, but as proof that failure does not end a story, it refines it." A hush swept through the crowd. Even the air seemed to pause. "I lost everything once," she continued. "My business, my home, my pride. I was told I was unworthy of success. I was told my dreams were too small, my love too weak, my value too little. But I learned that dignity is not measured by who walks beside you when the world applauds. It's measured by who you are when no one believes in you." Applause broke out, gentle at first, then rising into thunder. Tears glistened in the eyes of women standing in the front rows. Small business owners, single mothers, designers who had come to see her launch a program that would change their lives. She raised a hand, calming the room. "The Langston Grace Foundation will invest in rebuilding women's dreams the same way I rebuilt mine. It will fund education, entrepreneurship, and second chances, because every woman deserves the opportunity to rise, not just survive." The applause swelled again, echoing across the plaza. Behind her, James leaned in. "He's here," he whispered. Emma's breath stilled for a moment, but her composure didn't break. She turned her head slightly and saw him, Mark, standing at the edge of the crowd, his suit wrinkled, his face worn. No entourage, no cameras, no arrogance left to hide behind. When the ceremony ended, the crowd pressed forward to shake her hand, to thank her, to take photos. She smiled, gracious, humble, serene. But when the last of them had gone, Mark stepped forward slowly, eyes lowered. "Emma," his voice was rough, the confidence long gone. "You don't owe me a moment, but I had to see you. I needed to say," she looked at him quietly, "that you're sorry?" He nodded. "For everything. For the words, the betrayal, the court, the fire. I thought success meant power. I thought love made me weak. I see now it was the only thing that made me human." For a long time, she said nothing. The silence between them was the echo of everything they used to be. Then she stepped closer, her expression calm but kind. "Mark," she said softly, "I forgave you the night I rebuilt my first store. I realized anger keeps you chained to what broke you. Forgiveness sets you free." His eyes filled, but he didn't dare speak. She continued, her tone steady. "But forgiveness doesn't mean return. We walk different paths now. You taught me who I never want to become. And for that, I thank you." He swallowed hard, nodding, tears glistening at the corners of his eyes. "You became everything I pretended to be." "And you," she said, became the reminder that power without character is just noise. She stepped past him, her heels clicking softly on the marble, her team waiting at the doors. Mark turned, watching her disappear into the building, sunlight catching her hair like fire reborn. Outside, the reporters shouted her name again, but this time it wasn't gossip. It was respect. She stopped on the steps, facing the cameras one last time. "Let today remind us," she said, her voice carrying through the plaza, "that no humiliation is final, no betrayal is fatal, and no ending is truly the end. What others burn to destroy can rise brighter than before if you choose grace over revenge." The crowd erupted into applause. The sound rose, echoing off glass towers, carrying her words into the city she once feared. And as the cheers rolled on, Emma looked to the sky, whispering, "Uncle Richard, I did it. I rose with dignity." From the far edge of the plaza, Mark watched her silhouette framed against the morning light. For the first time, he understood. She had won long before anyone saw it, because true victory wasn't the empire she now owned. It was the peace she carried inside. And as the banners of the Langston Grace Foundation fluttered in the wind, the city that once watched her fall now bowed quietly to her rise. This wasn't revenge, it was rebirth.